On Christmas night, Angela's husband didn't come home. He was with another woman, but she didn't scream. She didn't chase. She lit the candles, served dinner for two, and ate alone. By midnight, the untouched plate across the table was colder than the silence. In the heart of Dallas, the mansion glittered with festive lights, but no one noticed her hands trembling as she wrote. Her words were calm, but each line carried a finality her voice never dared speak. Richard Campbell, a billionaire loved by the public, returned to a house still glowing, only to find the one person who truly saw him was gone. And on the oak desk, beside the photo of their wedding night, lay her letter. She didn't cry. She didn't explain. She simply gave him one impossible choice, because sometimes a quiet goodbye is the loudest revenge. What do you think she wrote, and what if that choice was between his legacy and her silence? Subscribe to see what the letter reveals, because the secret inside could ruin more than a marriage. Richard Campbell had everything. Dallas called him the man who built the skyline. From nothing, he carved an empire of steel and glass. Skyscrapers bore his name. Bankers and politicians shook his hand with respect. His suits were custom, his watch worth more than a family home. He was 45, billionaire, admired, envied. But inside his penthouse, silence followed him like a shadow. Success filled his calendar, not his soul. Richard often stood by the tall windows at night. The city glittered below, yet he felt strangely alone, as if the view belonged to someone else. He had money, he had fame. What he lacked was warmth. People whispered that he was untouchable, too powerful, too polished. No one saw the boy who once worked construction, who dreamed of more. No one touched the man behind the empire. Until one day, a woman walked into his boardroom, and with nothing more than her presence, she cracked the armor he had spent a lifetime building. Her name was Angela Campbell, a black woman with elegance, intelligence, and quiet strength. Before marriage, she had been a strategic marketing director, known for turning impossible campaigns into triumphs. She was sharp, confident, and yet deeply human. The first time Richard saw her, the room seemed to pause. Board members shuffled papers, screens flickered, but all his focus was on her. Angela's eyes carried both fire and warmth. Her voice had a rhythm that was calm, yet commanding. She wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. Every word she spoke felt measured, meaningful. She made complex data sound like a story everyone wanted to hear, and when her gaze met Richard's, something shifted. For a man who lived by numbers and contracts, this was different. It wasn't business. It was destiny disguised as a meeting. Richard leaned forward, listening more closely than he had in years. Angela wasn't trying to impress him. She didn't need to. Her presence did everything. In that moment, Richard realized that his empire, his wealth, even his fame, none of it mattered if he couldn't have her by his side. It happened in the most ordinary place, a cafe in the lobby of his building. Richard had been waiting, pretending to work, just to catch another glimpse of her. Angela arrived for her morning coffee, graceful as always. He stood too quickly, misjudging the distance. Their shoulders brushed, and in a blink, coffee spilled across his white shirt and navy tie. The rich scent filled the air, staining him in dark brown. Angela gasped, mortified. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry!" Her hands fluttered, reaching for napkins. But Richard, he laughed. Not the measured laugh he used in meetings, but a real, deep laugh he hadn't heard from himself in years. "Please," he said, dabbing at his shirt. "After you christen me with your coffee, I think you can call me Richard." Her worried frown softened into a smile. That smile carried warmth that no fortune could buy. From that moment, the accident became more than a mishap. It became a bridge. A coffee-stained tie turned into the first thread of a story neither of them expected. And years later, that very moment would be remembered as the symbol of how their love began. What started with spilled coffee soon grew into evenings filled with conversation. Richard found excuses to see her. Angela, careful yet curious, never pushed him away. Dinners stretched into hours. They talked about childhood dreams, about failures and triumphs. She told him about growing up in South Carolina, the books her father read to her, the dances her mother taught. He shared stories of his humble beginnings, a carpenter's son who once swung a hammer before he held billion-dollar contracts. For Richard, Angela was more than company. She was renewal. Around her, he laughed more, breathed deeper, felt younger. His empire no longer seemed like enough. He wanted more. He wanted a life with her. Angela listened with her whole being. Her laugh was soft but rich. Her silence was never empty. It was filled with attention. She had a way of seeing through the layers of his polished life, down to the man he rarely let anyone know. Each night, Richard dreaded the goodbye at her door. Each morning he looked for her smile. Without even noticing, they were falling. Not into wealth, not into fame, but into the kind of love that changes everything. Christmas Eve arrived, crisp and clear. Dallas glittered with lights, but Richard wanted a moment that belonged only to them. He led Angela to the rooftop of his newest tower. The city spread beneath them, alive with color. Then, with a single gesture, he pointed toward the skyline. Across the glass wall of his first building, thousands of lights formed two simple words: "Marry me." Angela gasped. Snow began to fall. Rare in Texas, rare enough to feel like heaven itself had arranged it. Her eyes shimmered with tears. Richard knelt, holding a ring that seemed to capture both starlight and memory. "Angela, Rose," he whispered. "I built an empire of steel, but none of it matters without you. Be my wife. Build the rest of life with me." She covered her mouth, breathless. The city noise faded. Only the snow, the lights, and the man she loved remained. "Yes," she whispered, voice shaking but sure. "Yes, Richard. 1,000 times, yes." He slipped the ring onto her hand, and together they stood in falling snow. Dallas had never seen such a night. It was wealth, power, and glory. But more than that, it was love shining brighter than any light below. Spring came, and with it, a wedding that Dallas society would never forget. The Campbell name already commanded respect. The ceremony sealed it in legend. At the botanical garden, flowers bloomed in perfect harmony. Orchids from Angela's South Carolina roots mixed with roses that symbolized Richard's empire. It was not just a union of two people. It was the blending of cultures, families, and worlds. Angela walked down the aisle in a gown that glowed in the sun. Richard's breath caught. Skyscrapers could not compare to the beauty before him. Guests whispered, "A perfect couple, power and grace." Their vows were simple, yet heavy with meaning. Richard promised to build more than towers. He vowed to build a home with her at its center. Angela promised to stand beside him in every storm. Applause thundered when they sealed their vows with a kiss. Cameras flashed. Business leaders, politicians, and socialites clapped, but none of that mattered. For Angela, the moment was not about fame. It was about the way Richard looked at her, as if she was the only person in the world. They danced beneath the evening stars. Money and prestige surrounded them, but what held them together was far richer: love. The Swiss Alps welcomed them with snow-capped peaks and crisp mountain air. Richard had arranged the honeymoon as a surprise: private helicopters, a suite that overlooked valleys painted in white, orchids from Angela's childhood home waiting in the room. For weeks they skied by day and dreamed by night. They laughed when Angela, seeing snow for the first time, tried and fell, only for Richard to catch her. They explored hidden villages, shared hot chocolate by firelight, and walked hand in hand beneath stars. One evening, as the sun melted behind the mountains, Angela whispered, "How did we get here? A year ago, I was leading meetings. Now, I'm standing at the top of the world with you." Richard took her hand, pressing it to his chest. "Whatever you dream," he said, "I'll build it. If you want a house filled with warmth, I'll make it. If you want a legacy, I'll shape it. I'll build not just towers, but a future for us." She smiled, tears threatening to fall. "Then promise me," she said. "Promise me we'll always make time for love, even when the world calls your name." "I promise," Richard replied, his voice steady as the mountains around them. Back in Dallas, their life settled into rhythm. The penthouse that once felt cold now glowed with warmth. Angela filled it with touches of home, colors, books, and laughter. On quiet nights, they planned. Richard spoke of new projects, towers that would reshape the city. Angela listened, then added dreams of her own. "One day," she said softly, "I want to hear small feet running through these halls. I want this home to echo with children's laughter." Richard's heart swelled. He had chased wealth and status for so long. But this was the dream he wanted most. "Then we will," he promised. "We'll build that life together." They hosted dinner parties, blending cultures and flavors. Friends admired them, calling them the couple who had it all. But when the guests left, Richard and Angela remained simply husband and wife, laughing together, holding each other close. Every Sunday, they walked through the Arts District, hand in hand, as though they were just another couple in love. Angela's vision of family became the guiding star in their conversations. Richard imagined children with her eyes, her smile, her strength. The empire outside their doors was vast, but their truest empire was the one they dreamed within their home. Their first anniversary approached with joy. Richard planned it perfectly. A private dinner, flowers, gifts. Angela woke that morning smiling, but beneath the smile was a tremor. She had felt small waves of weakness in recent weeks, dizziness when standing, tiredness that clung like shadow. She brushed it off as stress. The day was magical. A helicopter tour of Dallas, a necklace to match her wedding ring, laughter that carried them back to the start. But as night fell, the weakness returned stronger. At dinner, candlelight flickered across Angela's face. Richard raised his glass in a toast, words of devotion on his lips. Angela reached for her water, but her hand shook. The glass slipped slightly. She tried to smile, but the room tilted. "I just need some air," she whispered, standing. Then her legs gave way. Richard caught her before she hit the floor. Fear gripped him. Billion-dollar projects had never shaken him, but this moment did. "I'm taking you to the hospital," he said, his voice fierce, no room for debate. Angela wanted to protest, but the darkness pressed in. The perfect anniversary turned into flashing lights, hospital corridors, and uncertainty. It was the night their love story first collided with fragility, and the shadow refused to leave. The hospital room was bright, but the words spoken inside carried shadows. Dr. Bennett sat across from Richard and Angela, his tone careful. "It's a rare autoimmune disorder," he explained. "Her immune system is attacking her nerves, weakening her muscles. The good news, it's early. The hard truth, treatment will be long, uncertain, and painful." Angela squeezed Richard's hand, trying to be calm, but Richard's world tilted. He had defeated every challenge with money, power, and determination. Yet here, none of it mattered. "How much?" he asked automatically, clinging to the one tool he knew. The doctor shook his head. "This isn't about money. It's about time, patience, and strength." Richard looked at his wife, her face pale, her smile fragile yet brave. A storm of emotions rose inside him. Fear, anger, helplessness. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless. That night, as Angela drifted into restless sleep, Richard sat by her bed, his hand holding hers tightly. He whispered to himself, "What's the use of billions if I can't protect her? What's the worth of empires if I lose her?" The empire outside the hospital windows glittered. But inside, Richard realized the only treasure worth saving was lying in the bed beside him. Days turned into weeks. Angela's hospital room became their home. Machines beeped softly. Nurses moved in and out. Life outside seemed far away. Angela bore the treatments with grace. IV drips, endless tests, fatigue so deep she could barely lift her head. Yet, when Richard entered, she smiled. "You're here," she whispered, as if that alone gave her strength. Richard tried to manage his business from the corner of her room. Contracts, meetings, calls, it all waited. But his focus was fixed on her. One night, she urged, "You don't have to stay every minute. The company needs you." Richard set the papers aside and leaned close. "Listen to me. You are my business now. You are my empire. Everything else can wait." And tears welled in Angela's eyes, not from weakness, but from love. She knew what it cost him, walking away from power, from prestige. Yet his vow was stronger than ambition. Together, they faced each day. When she cried from the pain of therapy, he held her hand. When she laughed at small victories, he laughed too. The penthouse of Dallas still bore his name, but Richard Campbell's heart had moved into this room. His wealth had built towers. His love was building something greater: endurance. Physical therapy began. It was brutal. Angela's body trembled with each effort. Muscles that once moved with grace now fought against her. Sweat mixed with tears. "Again," the therapist urged gently. Angela bit her lip, pushing through. Her legs wobbled. She fell. Richard rushed forward, but Angela shook her head. "Let me try again," she whispered. Richard's chest ached as he watched her fight. This was not the woman who once commanded boardrooms with effortless power. This was a warrior, fragile yet unbroken. He stayed beside her, handing her water, steadying her arms, whispering encouragement. When the sessions ended, Angela collapsed into bed, exhausted. Some nights she cried into his chest. "I hate this," she confessed. "I hate being weak." Richard stroked her hair. "You're not weak. You're stronger than anyone I know. stronger than me. He had won contracts worth billions. He had built skyscrapers against the sky, yet none of it compared to the sight of his wife, refusing to quit, fighting for the right to live. Pain became part of their routine. But so did love. Angela's struggle and Richard's unwavering presence turned suffering into something else, a bond. Tested by fire, stronger than steel. One morning, Richard woke to silence. Angela's side of the bed was empty. Panic gripped him until he heard soft music on the balcony. He stepped out, and there she was. Angela stood carefully, holding onto the railing, moving through her therapy exercises alone. Her hands trembled, her legs shook, but she was standing. "Angela," Richard whispered, his throat tight. She turned, her face glowing with triumph. "I wanted to see if I could do it without help," she said, breathless but proud. He rushed forward, ready to steady her, but she lifted a hand. "Not yet. Let me finish." Richard stood close, tears burning his eyes as he watched her complete each movement. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was victory. When she finally leaned into his arms, he whispered, "I've built towers that touch the clouds, but this, seeing you stand, is the greatest thing I've ever witnessed." Angela smiled, her forehead against his chest. "Then remember this moment, because we're not done yet. I still have more mountains to climb." Hope flickered, fragile but real. For the first time in months, Richard allowed himself to believe that the shadow might one day lift. They returned home. The penthouse no longer glittered as a symbol of power, it became a place of healing. One room was transformed into a therapy space. Support bars lined the bathroom. Equipment filled corners once reserved for art. Yet Richard refused to let it feel like a hospital. Flowers brightened every room. Angela's favorite books lined the shelves. Music drifted softly in the background. Their days followed a new rhythm. Morning exercises, afternoon rest. Evenings spent together at the dinner table, sometimes with friends, sometimes alone, always with love. Richard cooked more than he ever had before. Angela teased him, laughing when he burned toast. That laughter, light and warm, became his new measure of success. One night, over simple pasta, Angela said softly, "This isn't the life we planned, but it's still ours, and I wouldn't trade it." Richard reached across the table, taking her hand. "Neither would I, because plans can fail, towers can fall. But us? We're unshakable." The city lights outside their windows still glittered with money and power. But inside, Richard and Angela built something richer, a daily life of healing, of love, of choosing each other again and again. It wasn't the dream they had imagined, but it was real, and it was theirs. Life seemed calmer. Angela was gaining strength. Their dinners were warm, their evenings tender, but business never waited. That was when Gretchen Thomas entered Richard's world. She was young, brilliant, and the new project manager for the Houston development. With deadlines pressing, Richard spent more hours on calls, more nights bent over blueprints. Angela first heard her name in passing. "Gretchen has a clever solution. Gretchen thinks we should try this." At first, Angela smiled. Work was Richard's nature. He thrived on ambition. But slowly, Gretchen's presence grew larger. Meetings stretched late, texts buzzed at midnight. Richard's eyes lit up when he spoke about the Houston project, about Gretchen's bold ideas. Angela tried to be understanding. She remembered how passion for work had once drawn her to him, but now it felt different. His mind seemed far away, his body present but restless. The penthouse felt colder, even with the lights twinkling outside. Angela watched him from across the dinner table, his phone face down yet glowing with notifications. For the first time, she felt something that scared her more than illness. Distance. It began with whispers. The soft buzz of Richard's phone after midnight. The way he excused himself to the balcony, speaking low, his back to her. Angela lay awake, listening. Her heart thudded with unease. She wanted to trust him, but every vibration of that phone planted doubt deeper. The next morning, she noticed, he said Gretchen too easily, too often. At breakfast, at lunch, during a casual conversation. Her name had become part of their life, uninvited. Angela tried to brush it aside. "It's just work," she told herself. But work had always been Richard's second love, never his first. Now it felt like she was the one pushed aside. One evening, she looked across the table. He smiled at her, but his eyes drifted toward the phone. A message blinked. His smile faltered. Angela's spoon paused. The soup grew cold. Silence filled the room. Inside, fear and sadness wrestled. She had fought through sickness, through weakness. But how do you fight a ghost? A name that slips into your marriage, unseen yet felt. The signs were too clear. Something was changing, and Angela's heart knew it before her mind admitted it. Christmas Eve arrived. The city glowed with lights, streets filled with carols. Families gathered close, but in their penthouse the air was heavy. Angela set the table. 2 plates, candles lit, a tree sparkling with ornaments from their love story. The little coffee cup that once symbolized their beginning hung at the center. She waited. 7 o'clock, 8, 9. Her phone buzzed. A message from Richard. "Meeting, running late, don't wait up." Her heart sank. She knew where he was, not in a boardroom, not at the office, but with Gretchen. Angela sat down at the table. The chair across from her remained empty. She poured wine, but her hands trembled. The sound of Christmas bells from the street below only deepened the silence inside. Tears did not come. Anger did not rise. Instead, a strange calm spread through her. She looked at the glowing tree, the reflection of herself alone in the glass windows. For the first time, she saw the truth. Love had once filled this room. Tonight, it was gone. Angela rose from the table. Her steps were steady. No shouting, no broken plates, no storm, only quiet. She walked to her desk and pulled out paper. Her pen moved slowly, carefully. Each word carried weight. Her heart broke with every line, but her hand did not tremble. Then she opened the closet. She lifted down her valise. The sound of the zipper seemed louder than any argument. She folded clothes neatly. A coat, a scarf, the pendant from her mother. She placed them inside with care. Every movement was calm, almost graceful. She had given her tears to sickness. She would not give them to betrayal. Angela paused at the doorway of their bedroom. His suit jacket hung over a chair, his tie draped carelessly. She touched the fabric once, then let it fall. In silence, she prepared her exit. It was not drama. It was dignity. On the desk, beside the glowing lamp, lay the letter. Angela read it once more before sealing it. "My dearest Richard, by the time you read this, I will be gone. Do not blame yourself. Do not blame her. This is not about betrayal. It is about freedom. I free you to find happiness, without guilt, without burden. I know what my illness has cost us. I see how you shine when you speak of her. I cannot be the reason your light dims. Remember me as I was, standing strong, laughing in the snow, dancing with you beneath the lights. Not as I am now, fragile and tired. You built towers that touch the sky, but I cannot be the weight that keeps you on the ground. Please do not fight me on this. My only gift left is to give you back your freedom. I loved you then. I love you now, but I love you enough to let you go." Angela folded the paper, slid it into an envelope, and placed it where he could not miss it. She closed the suitcase, took one last look at the Christmas tree. Then, with quiet steps, she walked out into the night. The Christmas party was alive. Crystal glasses clinked. Laughter floated through the penthouse. Carols played softly in the background, but Richard felt restless. He searched for Angela among the guests. No sign of her emerald dress. He slipped away from the crowd, walked down the hall to their bedroom. The bed was untouched. The silence was sharp. On her desk, beneath the lamp, lay an envelope with his name. Richard picked it up. His chest tightened before he even opened it. The words blurred as he read. Line by line, her voice spoke through the page. Calm. Final. By the time he reached the end, his hands shook. The room spun. He staggered back, clutching the letter like a wound. Outside, the party sparkled. Inside, his world collapsed. Richard Campbell, billionaire, builder of towers, master of deals, stood frozen in a storm of poinsettias and gold lights, and for the first time in decades, he felt powerless. Richard sat alone, the letter crumpled in his hand. Music and laughter leaked from the party, but he heard none of it. Her words echoed. "I free you to find happiness. I cannot be your burden." He thought of the empire he had built, the skyline shaped by his ambition. The contracts signed, the fortunes made, none of it mattered now. Money could not bring her back. Power could not rewrite her letter. Gretchen's brilliance meant nothing compared to Angela's quiet strength. He pictured Angela's smile, her eyes when she first walked into the boardroom, the way she lit up their home even in sickness. He had chased wealth, chased deadlines, and lost the one thing worth more than all of it, A hollow ache spread through him. For the first time he understood the true emptiness of riches. His fortune could buy anything, except the woman who had given him everything. Regret pressed heavy on his chest, and he knew, if he did nothing, she would be gone forever. At dawn, Richard moved like a man possessed. The party had ended, the guests gone, but his mission had just begun. He called every airline, demanding flight records. He hired private investigators, sparing no cost. He dialed her number again and again, each call going to voicemail. His messages grew desperate. "Angela, please, come home. We can fix this. I love you. Only you." The penthouse felt haunted. Her coffee cup still sat by the sink. Her scarf hung by the door. Every trace of her screamed absence. He refused to rest. Days blurred into nights. Each lead felt thin, each silence unbearable. For once, his billions gave him no advantage. Finding her was not about money, it was about will, and his will was breaking. Richard Campbell, once untouchable, was now a man chasing shadows, fueled only by love and regret. While searching through her vanity, Richard found it. A leather-bound book, edges worn, pages filled with Angela's handwriting. He opened it with trembling hands. Her voice spilled out in ink. Another late meeting with Gretchen. Richard came home smiling, full of her ideas. I tried to be happy, but I saw myself in the mirror, pale, thin. My hands shook. No wonder he prefers her company. Page after page cut deeper. I want to be his partner, not his patient. I feel him slipping away. Tears blurred the words. Richard pressed the book to his chest as if holding her heart. He had been blind. She had suffered quietly beside him, writing her pain in pages while he was busy with deadlines. The journal ended with hope, then resignation. If I love him, I must let him go. Richard wept. For the first time in years, he wept without restraint, and in his tears he knew he had to find her, not for redemption, but because life without her was no life at all. The trail finally pointed south. Charleston, South Carolina. Angela's childhood home. Richard boarded his jet, driven by hope and fear. As the city came into view, memories of her stories returned. Church bells, oak trees draped in Spanish moss, the scent of salt in the air. Angela had returned to her roots, to the place where she first learned strength, community, and faith. In Charleston, she stayed near a small church surrounded by women who prayed with her, neighbors who welcomed her. Here, she wasn't the wife of a billionaire, she was simply Angela again. She found peace in quiet mornings, attending services, walking beneath the old magnolias. Slowly, her body healed. More importantly, her spirit found rest. But every night, when the bells tolled, her thoughts drifted back to Dallas, to Richard, to the love that had broken her heart and built her at the same time. Richard landed in Charleston knowing this was his chance. He could not buy forgiveness. He could only ask for it. The journey was far from over, but for the first time since Christmas, he felt a spark of hope. The church bells rang softly that Sunday morning. Richard stood outside, hands trembling, heart pounding harder than any boardroom battle. Through the open doors, he saw her, Angela, dressed in a simple white dress, her head bowed in prayer. Sunlight streamed through stained glass, wrapping her in quiet light. For a moment, he froze. The billionaire who had conquered cities suddenly felt like a child, afraid, unworthy. Angela looked up. Their eyes met across the pews. Silence fell heavy between them, thicker than words. Her face was calm, but her eyes brimmed with questions. He stepped closer. Each footfall echoed in the hollow space. When he finally stood before her, Richard could barely breathe. Her lips parted, but no words came. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. Angela. Just her name, nothing more. And yet it carried everything. Richard's voice trembled. Money, fame, empire, none of it means anything without you. Angela's eyes filled with tears, but her words were steady. I am not the same woman you married. My body is weaker. My spirit carries scars. He reached for her hands, holding them gently as if they might break. Then let me be a better man, not to fix you, not to own you, but to walk with you, wherever you are, however you are. Angela's breath caught. She had waited for this, not riches, not promises, but humility. Her tears slipped free. Do you really mean that? Richard pressed her hands to his chest. Every word. Without you, this heart is just noise. With you, it beats with purpose. Silence lingered. Then Angela whispered, Maybe we can begin again. Richard stayed in Charleston. No boardrooms, no towers, just oak trees, ocean air, and slow mornings beside Angela. He learned to walk her pace. He carried groceries. He joined her at community prayers. He listened more than he spoke. For the first time, he lived without rushing. Angela grew stronger, not only in body, but in spirit. His presence steadied her. His humility softened her pain. Together, they rebuilt a rhythm. Quiet breakfasts, afternoon walks under Spanish moss, evenings filled with gentle laughter. Richard discovered that power wasn't measured in dollars, but in patience. Love wasn't proven in gifts, but in showing up. Angela discovered that she wasn't alone in her fight. She could lean without shame. Together, they were learning that healing wasn't about erasing scars. It was about carrying them side by side. One evening, Richard reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small ornament, wrapped in tissue. Angela frowned, then gasped when she saw it. The tiny coffee cup ornament. The same one from years ago, when love began with spilled coffee and laughter. He held it out, his voice breaking. Our love started here. Messy, imperfect, but real. It can start again, if you'll let it. Angela pressed a hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. That little ornament carried every memory. The rooftop proposal, the vows, the sickness, the distance, the pain, and now the choice. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. When her fingers closed over his, she whispered through sobs, "Yes, yes, we can." Richard pulled her into his arms. For the first time in years, her tears were not of sorrow, but release. Angela chose dignity. Richard chose repentance. Together, they chose love again. True love is not about perfection. It is about choosing each other again and again. In Charleston, the bells rang as they walked hand in hand, no longer billionaire and wife, but simply man and woman. Their story was not flawless. It was scarred, fragile, tested by betrayal and illness. Yet those very trials became the soil where love grew deeper. Money fades, fame shifts, even health can falter. But love, the choice to stay, to forgive, to rebuild, that is the greatest wealth of all. That Christmas, the tiny coffee cup ornament hung once more on their tree. A reminder that even broken beginnings can grow into second chances. It stood for everything they had lost and everything they had chosen to save. If this story touched you, share it with someone who still believes in love, and subscribe for more stories that remind us dignity, hope, and love are always worth fighting for. Because in the end, it is not the towers we build or the fortunes we chase that define us. It is the courage to forgive, the strength to choose love, and the grace to hold on, even when everything else falls away.